Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Friday edition of the Roundup, our Tuesday and Friday show where we fill you in with all the latest industry goings on. And as always, we've got lots to talk about today, so let's get right into it. So first off, we have developer opinions on Xbox Game Pass. Now, we've been talking up Microsoft quite a bit lately with the high value that Game Pass seems to have, and as it turns out, some developers do agree, although it's not a universal sentiment. Personally, I'm worried about what it will do for consumer value perceptions of games, and also enshrining the subscription service owners essentially as content gatekeepers for our industry. But still, Dino Patti, the co-founder of Playdead and Jumpship, notable for of course creating Limbo and Inside, was speaking at a panel at GameLab. He said that there are two real angles, the consumer angle and the developer one. Consumers of course want as many games as they can as cheaply as is possible, and the developer wants as many players as possible to play their game and as much money as they can get. Now, he openly admits that he might be biased, but that he does believe Game Pass is the first time that a subscription might be considered fair for third-party developers because Xbox know what developers want. Now, it seems that nobody's actually been explicit on the details of how Game Pass actually works for developers, but Frederick Wester from Paradox at the same panel said that it is a mistake to compare Game Pass to Spotify and Netflix because they're not the same thing. The difference is that Spotify pays artists based on how many song plays they get. For Netflix, they pay a studio a fixed fee depending on basically where they value the show. Now, the exact words that he used are this: they are fundamentally different here, and that's what you will see as well. So I suppose we can deduce that maybe Game Pass works similar-ish to Netflix, where maybe Microsoft pony up a chunk of cash for your game, and maybe, you know, I assume money over time after that. It's hard to say exactly. Now, he does say that OnLive used to pay based on how many hours players spent in a game. And he actually said that for Paradox, that was great because their games were played for thousands of hours. And then he said that the Game Pass model is actually pretty decent, but it does not play to their strengths, and he doesn't think they're paid enough. So I can kind of see where he's coming from, but playtime is hardly a brilliant measure for value of a game overall. And yeah, it seems like Microsoft are doing something that's a bit more direct cash-based, but again, it's tricky to find out exactly. Now, he does go on to claim, I've never seen anything like this in my 16 years in the industry, talking about how platforms are throwing money at developers to get them on their subscription services. He even says that if you can't make money today in games, you'll never be able to, because the industry favors established companies, and now is a really good time to get established. He does offer some advice though. He cautions that if an indie is offered a huge amount of money now, they need to make sure that they've got their future planned out effectively, because the lucrative times are not going to last forever. So what we're seeing is a bit of a shift, where platform holders want content and seemingly are quite willing to pay for it. It's a bit different to the traditional publishing model, and at least in the short term, it could be very good for developers. Platform holders seem desperate to invest in ways to increase the value of their platform. That obviously is in offering a variety of quality games that people want to play. Now, I imagine if you're a developer releasing a game soon, if your game is high quality or fits a niche, then yeah, you'll be knocking on their door with a grin, and it could be a really good thing. Now, I suppose speaking to what we're doing as a studio, well, we're not in a dissimilar position to that. We'll be in somewhere like that over the next few months, so that's going to be very interesting to consider. And of course, it's close to home for us because one of the other local developers, Billy Goat, have had their game, Supermarket Shriek, be on Game Pass. So yeah, that's a subscription service hitting pretty close to home, and I suppose I'll have to talk to Will about his experiences with that. Very interesting topic. Still though, this is a rush that probably won't last forever. Anyway, moving on, the Nintendo Switch Lite. It's a $200 handheld only version of the Switch due to come out September 20th. Now, it comes with a 5.5-inch screen down from 6.2 inches in the main Switch, and the controller and the Switch itself are one solid body, so I suppose it's not really a Switch, so to speak. Now, it's going to be compatible, of course, with all Switch games that can be played in handheld mode, which I do believe is the vast majority of them. It is missing some features of the Switch, though, like the ability to dock to a TV, but most are minor, like lacking the IR motion stabilization, camera, and HD rumble on the controllers. And then on the plus side, the left controller is actually a proper D-pad. There's not really much to say about this outside of it seemingly being a solid enough value for the quality of the first-party games, even if you do have to play those on a low-res 5-inch screen and you don't have the TV option. The Switch Lite, though, was not the only thing in the works. There is a Switch refresh, at least in a refresh of the internals, coming up according to some FCC filings. Now, this is not them going through the FCC with a new product. This is just a refresh, a parts refresh for the Switch. So very likely an updated SoC that will have similar performance, but maybe be a little bit more efficient, maybe a little bit better battery life, something like that. Similar to, I suppose, what we're seeing with the Switch Lite, which does reportedly also have better battery life. Then next, we've got an update in Shenmue that honestly is pretty bad. So there's some additional content in the retail and deluxe editions of the game, including in-game content and a season pass. According to a backer of the Kickstarter, the team confirmed to him that backers will not be given that content. And he said this: standard and deluxe versions released through retail sales are not affiliated with the crowdfunding campaign, so will not be included with backer pledges. However, they will be available for sale separately. Now, given that the pre-order content is Blazing Kick Advanced Technique Scroll, or a Blazing Kick Advanced Technique Scroll, a training outfit, and a Peking Power starter pack, that's not extremely important stuff, but I think it's the principle here that really does matter. And I'm genuinely awestruck at just how this team is constantly making crowdfunding blunders. But it does get worse when you see the Season Pass come into it. Backers don't get the Season Pass. They will have to purchase it separately. And that does include backers who paid upwards of $100 on the higher tiers of the game. Basically, between YSNet, the developer, Deep Silver, the publisher, and Epic, who of course, have the store exclusivity going on, this entire thing has just been handled terribly. This is the exact opposite of how a Kickstarter should be ran. If you've got superfans, the people who are willing to help fund your product to actually get it into existence, anyone in their right mind would know that those people should be supported and thanked for their passion, and that's not really what we're seeing happen here. So I guess sort of shame on YSNet for how they are handling this. Then moving on to a more consumer-friendly sort of side of things, we've got Valve apologizing for their confusing Steam Summer Sale event. So, Steam are running the Grand Prix event. Now, despite being fun on paper, it was designed poorly in a few ways, resulting in significant confusion amongst users, and that even led to many people removing games from their wish list because they didn't understand the rules, partially because Valve did not explain them well, and that's something that really can hurt indie games' visibility on the storefront. Now, Valve opened up to their mistakes with this event. They apologized in a way that I think does speak to their user base. They selected 5,000 users that contributed to the Grand Prix, and they gave them the top game on their wish list for free. Now, assuming an average price of about $30, given that the most expensive games probably are going to be like at the top, that could be an apology to the tune of like $150,000. Now, that's not as good as just running the event correctly, but it at least does show that they were willing to address the issue quickly and publicly. Next up, we've got another story on crunch. This time it's from Digital Extremes, the developer of Warframe. Of course, an interesting game in that it has been quite a success story as a live service game, also being a free-to-play one and seemingly not bungling that bit up either. Now, it's a game that gets updated constantly with both, I'd say, quite impressive new content and older content being reworked and remastered when it's not up to snuff. So they're doing a lot of work. And their CEO was asked about crunch because of this, amongst many other things, by Eurogamer. And when crunch was brought up, he admitted that basically they are blessed in that they control their own release dates, and that basically every day is fluid based on what they think that day. He said that the team as a whole treats development like a marathon, not a sprint, because if they sprint, it's not going to work. They would lose key developers by pushing them too hard, and then they would be dead in the water. And he affirms that this is not a basically not a big commitment on crunch or the industry, it's just how their business works. Their business model revolves around constantly updating, and a marathon pace is the sound business way to do that. Now, he is asked if their approach is something that the industry could learn from, and he has a bit of a diplomatic response saying that every game is different and that he has sympathy and empathy for developers who are not in their position, basically in that they very much are, masters of their own castle. They can't do what they want, but they do have a lot of control over their own schedule. Now, this stuff's all good to hear. Warframe certainly does look like a game that's getting continually better and better. It's a game with a very healthy player base, and from a distance, it kind of reminds me of Path of Exile in a few ways, and maybe a little bit of how modern Destiny is being in its approach. Just continuing, to make things that both yourself and your audience like, and players just seem to show up and play and support your efforts. And really, those three games are examples of successful live services. I mean, Destiny, a lot more troubled in its past, but seemingly being a bit better now that they're free from Activision. Okay, with that covered, let's talk about some games. So first up, graphic setting strings have appeared and being leaked from Rockstar Social Club, and they heavily hint at Red Dead's rumored PC version. The graphic settings include DirectX 12 support, amongst other settings that are currently not in GTA 5. And I imagine we won't have to wait too long for this to be announced, as it would just be leaving millions of dollars on the table if they didn't do it. So Red Dead PC, probably going to happen soon enough. Now, the other game to talk about is Amazon Game Studios' announcement of a free-to-play Lord of the Rings MMO. Now, they're actually working with Liu Technologies, who are the parent company of Warframe's Digital Extremes, so perhaps they'll get some advice on how to actually handle a free-to-play game effectively. Now, given Amazon Game Studios' very troubled history releasing anything and the recent stories about their issues and losing developers, I'd be worried about this, especially since it does seem to be very early in development. Now, there's a lot of potential in that world. I would love to see it be done well, but it's really a huge name to live up to. Then next on our list, we've got GameStop. So they have spoken about subscriptions and the shift to digital, essentially doubling down on how they upsell merch, and they want to be a more experience-based retailer, with them seemingly wanting, skilled associates who can advise customers, wanting their stores to feel a bit more like gaming hubs. I suppose more similar to maybe a local cardboard and mini gaming store, maybe what Games Workshop tries to do at scale with their events, or what Apple tries to do on a global scale, with them even saying they're going to open a esports performance center partnered with Complexity Gaming. To be honest, I'm not buying it. Although that said, I'm not the audience for game merch. I don't like print tees, I don't like Funkos. You'll never get anything in a GameStop that, in my view, is really that interesting or anywhere near as interesting as just finding an artist you like on Etsy who will actually make something. So, in short, I think they're doubling down on overpriced plastic tat. And given their stock's continual freefall, I just don't think it's going to work out that well. But that said, I'm not their market. So, what do you think? Is there really a large enough market for physical stores selling game merch, especially in the era of the internet? I don't know. I'm really suspect. But anyway, there you have it. That is it for this episode of the Roundup. It is also the last of the holiday roundup. So yeah, soon enough, the content will be back to the regular set that you know in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. And with that, I will see you next time.